Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? It's good to be here. It's good to see you. And first order of business, roll call. Roll call. Make sure that you type present or say something in the comments. I want to make sure that you're all present and accounted for. Whether you're watching live right now, you're tuned into the live show, or you're watching on replay. So I'll be checking, huh? I'll be checking. This is great having you guys here, right? This is a spot for anti-imperialist news, journalism, reporting, and all things anti-colonial. So we are going to break down what's happening in Cuba in just a moment. And by breakdown, obviously, we mean give you the real story, not the curated CIA version, right? They're busy. They've been busy for the last 60 years. So this is great. We already have a tip on Rockfin from Karen. Thank you so much for the tip. There's no note, but I'm very grateful. And some other wonderful news. I cannot believe this. Look at this graph. Look at this highly scientifically accurate description right here. We are at 399 supporters on Patreon. We're literally one member away. This is absolutely fantastic. You guys are unreal. I am so grateful for your support. And when we hit 400, I'm going to play a new crab dance for you. So for those of you who are not familiar, when someone joins on Patreon or donates on GoFundMe, we play a crab dance, which is like a little kind of celebration. All right. Once you see it, there's no going back. This is a spot. So if you want to support the show, if you want to support anti-imperialist journalism and reporting, it's patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. And thank you so much for that. Again, I don't want to be plugging the show right out the gate, but this is important news. This is very, very important news. So thank you for that. All right. Thank you for that. Now, I see right now that we're doing pretty good right now. We are currently on YouTube. Almost 200 people watching. This is fire. Absolutely fire. Okay, and we already got a couple of tips. You guys are so generous. Rob says, Viva la révolution. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Vive la révolution. Bon, je te le dis en français. C'est la même chose. And Sam says, can you please do another interview with Dr. Syed Mohammed Marendi again? With pleasure. I've done several interviews with Professor Marendi. He's really a great friend. I think he's extraordinarily intelligent. Every time there is a reason why he is invited on all the networks. You know, he just wipes the floor with all of these imperialist thugs. So I will more than happily do another one with Professor Marendi in the near future. I've had him on here a couple of times and on my show on Press TV. He's the best. He's really the best. So I'm glad you like that. And again, guys, we need to be clear on something here. We need to be clear on something. There are a lot of people, in general, I'm talking now, in general, who want to cover Syria, who want to cover Iran, and they don't know their elbow from their backside. The Middle East is the most important, the most vital region in the world for many reasons, and politically especially, without a doubt. It always has been. It always has been, and still is, and always will be. So, given that the Middle East is the most important place in the world, it's normal, it's natural that in this day and age you have a lot of propaganda about this region, especially in English, in the Anglosphere, right? So the problem is, if you're consuming media in English, and again, a lot of people, we have almost, 1.4 English speakers in the world. The United States, the United Kingdom, these colonial powers, they're English-speaking countries, so they disseminate a lot of propaganda, a lot of nonsense in English, right? And then, of course, their allies do the same in French and German, etc. But nonetheless, my point here is that you are bound to come across a lot of horse manure in English because the enemies of the Middle East are putting out that stuff in English, and they control the media, right? You have these massive news organizations and outlets in print, on the air, radio. They are English-speaking. They're in the Anglosphere. So you have to be careful, right? And I don't. I'm sure perhaps some people have good intentions, but they end up. It's difficult. right? If you don't speak the language, you've never been there, you don't know anyone there, you don't have family there, you haven't particularly studied anything to do with the region. I mean, it's difficult to report on this accurately. And so I tip my hat to those who do. But you have to be careful. And so my point is that it's very important to listen to people like Professor Marendi, given that he's Iranian. It's important to listen to people from the region, especially if you don't speak their language. You understand? This is very important. This is the problem that we have. It's that even in people who perhaps mean well, they don't listen to anyone from the region, whether it's Syria or it's Iran or anything. And so, I really take the time. For example, I don't speak Persian. I don't speak Farsi. So when I'm covering Iran, I really have to be careful what I'm doing. I really have to be careful that I'm doing a good job, just because as a journalist, you want to do accurate reporting. You want to do the best job that you can, but also because I don't speak the language, right? I've never been to Iran. I know people in Iran, right? But I have never been there myself, and still I want to do a good job. So it's very important for me, and I'm very grateful that many Iranians have told me my coverage is on point. I'm very happy about that, because it gives you a boost in confidence and lets you know that you've done some good stuff. And having Professor Marendi on is just one aspect of it. But for example, covering the elections, I did this myself also on Press TV, right? I did this also here with you guys on the YouTube. And there are other people who cover it. They don't really, well, they inadvertently perhaps repeat some things that you would not really say. So anyway, it's important, right? It's important to try and get things right as best we can, and always, I tip my hat to those who do. There are many people who do a great job, so this is really, really great. But be careful in English. That's my point. Et malheureusement, il existe ce problème en français, en allemand, etc. Bref. So let's move on to our main topic here. Speaking of countries that are targeted and regions that are targeted by the United States, right? By the way, just before I start, we have 250 people watching, but only 130 likes. Make sure that you hit the like button to get those numbers up, and then that'll be great. Okay, let's start. Let it begin. Let it begin. So in Cuba, you guys might have seen the news that, protests have erupted all over Cuba. So not just in the capital, but all over, right? And they've been saying this on all of the mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN, you name it. And I'm going to show you a small clip here. Yes, you'll have to suffer with me. I'm going to show you a small clip here. This is from CBS. And it's just a few minutes of their coverage. Just look at what they say about these protests. Look what they say. Anti-government protests that have erupted. And we're going to go through it point by point, and then I have a lot to say about this. A lot to say about this. Okay? So let's take a look here. Ready?
Thousands marched across several cities yesterday in some of the biggest anti-government demonstrations on the island nation in decades. People took to the streets protesting food shortages and high prices as the country suffers through a crippling economic crisis, exacerbated by the pandemic. So Manuel Borges is in Miami, where demonstrators also came out this weekend.
Okay, I'm going to stop her right there. Now, she's going to correct herself a little bit after, but what did she say? She said that people are going through an economic crisis. You care to explain why? Why is there an economic crisis? Oh, there just is one. And she says exacerbated by the pandemic, which is true to some extent. But why is there an economic crisis? You don't think it maybe has something to do with those pesky sanctions, those embargoes that you've been putting on Cuba? Every single president has been putting on Cuba. You don't think that does something to countries? You don't think that's something like siege warfare, where you cause starvation, lack of medicines? No? You don't think that has something to do with it? Really? Okay, let's continue.
In a show of solidarity with Cuban protesters. Manny, good morning. What's going on?
Yeah, good morning to you. We're standing outside of Versailles restaurant. This is typically the epicenter of demonstrations and rallies here in Miami's Little Havana neighborhood, and last night was no different. Thousands came out here to support those protesters in Cuba, and while the demonstrations
Okay, again, something that they don't explain to you. Of course, you have thousands of people coming out to support protests in Cuba. You know why? Because Miami is where all the Cuban exiles are, right? So, I mean, this is like asking people in Virginia if they like the CIA. Wait, yeah, okay, no, great. What does that mean? Anyway, let's continue.
Here may be commonplace. What's happening in Cuba is not only rare, but historic. Thousands of protesters gathered in communities around Havana and across the island nation, shouting freedom and we are not afraid. Although protests began peacefully, they soon took a more violent turn as police and special forces moved in later on to break up the demonstrations.
Here we go. Here we go. Regime forces are cracking down. It's just copy paste, right? Let's do this for Iran. Oh yeah, let's do this for Syria. Oh yeah, Cuba, Venezuela. Regime forces are cracking down. They've moved in, right? These brutal goddamn Stasi types. Look what they're doing to the peaceful protesters. Copy paste, right? I feel bad for the people at the State Department have to copy paste all this stuff all the time.
President Miguel Diaz-Canel himself made an appearance at one protest and spoke with some of the citizens who confronted him. Demonstrators here say they are fed up by food shortages, rising prices, collapsing infrastructure, and the government's response to a rising number of COVID-19 infections. On Saturday, Cuba recorded nearly 7,000 new cases.
Again, rising food prices, right? Food shortages, lack of medicine. This is all a product of sanctions. This is all a product of sanctions. I literally spoke to my cousin in Syria a few days ago. They got to wait in line for bread, right? You got enormous queues for fuel. There's no medicine. This is all because of sanctions, right? And that's in Syria, a country that was wheat self-sufficient, that was a net exporter of wheat. So it's not a country like Syria is not just bringing in wheat. Syria is exporting wheat. That's how much wheat it has. Do you understand? That's how much crops it's growing. Syria has oil fields. It don't need oil and fuel. It can do it. No. Do you see what they do with sanctions? They cripple you. Same thing with Iran. Same thing with Venezuela. Right? I spoke to the UN Special Rapporteur on Sanctions. Dude, when I put up the full thing, you will listen to what she says about what children in Venezuela, what happened to their school supplies, never mind their food. Man, look at how dishonest they are. They frame it in a way that makes it sound like it's the government's fault, right? And they make no mention. It's not like, oh yeah, well, you know, some of this is because of incompetence or corruption in the government, and some of this is because of sanctions and, you know, the embargo, which is really hurting people. No, it's just, oh, look, it's just these magical food prices that just keep rising by themselves. And they do this with every single report. Go watch a report on the elections in Syria. The elections, they're not even talking about anything else. Just they mention, yeah, there's an economic crisis, but they don't actually tell you why. There's no mention of why there's an economic crisis. Same thing with Venezuela. Same thing with Iran. The people are so dishonest. This is not reporting. This is propaganda. When you report, you give facts. You say the truth. This is not the truth. They're obfuscating. They're lying. They're hiding what their government is doing, what the Americans and the European Union are doing to Cuba, are doing to Yemen, are doing to Venezuela, Syria, Iran. They're not telling you the truth.
On Cuban television, Diaz-Canel blamed the protest on the U.S. and its trade embargo for a severe impact on Cuba's recent economic downturn.
Right? So here we have the passage where they say sanctions, but they say, oh, look, it's the regime that's saying it's sanctions. No. The sanctions are real. Sanctions are siege warfare. This is a fact. This is quantifiable. You can literally plot this on a graph, how it destroys economies. It's not the Cuban president who's saying that. This is a fact. Sanctions hurt, right? It's a fact. It's scientific. You can quantify this. And every time they say, look, it's like this is just it's a counter argument that the regime is saying, like it's propaganda. It's not real. No, it's just the president who's saying that. Oh no, it's not, honey. Oh no, it's not. And look, they do the same goddamn thing here, right? Look at this headline over here. This is from The Guardian, okay? Look what The Guardian says. Cuban president claims protests part of U.S. plot to fracture Communist Party. Like as if there is no history of the U.S. trying to fracture the Communist Party in Cuba, right? The Bay of Pigs, that's just imagine. The Cuban president just made all that up, right? Operation Mongoose, he just made all that up. All these times they tried to assassinate Fidel Castro, it is just made up, right? This is just something the Cuban president is saying because, he's a liar or something. Dude, you can literally go on the CIA's website and find the documents of how they tried to screw with Cuba and Iran and various, and various other countries. They don't even hide it anymore. It's just right out there in the open. They admit to it. It's incredible. It's really incredible, man.
Many more regulations, many more sanctions against it, which basically has cut off all income coming into Cuba.
Portia Siegelbaum is a CBS News producer based in Cuba.
I think that the Biden administration, he at least said at the beginning he was going to review this policy and make changes, but nothing has happened.
Right, so that's the only honest bit of reporting in the entire segment. Right? They just mentioned it for 10 seconds that, like Biden, he said he's going to remove sanctions, but yeah, there's nothing to it. But they don't actually go into detail. They don't tell you that what it causes, right? And if you go and you watch the reports from CNN and Deutsche Welle, there's no mention of the word sanctions. It's not there. It's not there. The word sanctions or embargo is not there. And they did the same thing with the Syrian elections, as I just told you, because these were a few weeks ago, right? Iran's elections as well. They always talk about an economic crisis and they just never tell you why it's there, right? It's just magical. It fell out of the sky. So this is how they brainwash people. They brainwash you into thinking that, this is entirely 100% the fault of this government. So they're trying to manufacture consent for, further regime change, foreign intervention, bullying at the UN Security Council, these kinds of things. So that when you see Uncle Sam sending troops, you don't give a shit because you're like, oh yeah, I remember this government is evil. They're starving their people. Who told you that? CNN? This is unbelievable, man. Look at this. I just want to show you the rest of the report and then continue, right?
Several politicians have expressed their support for the people of Cuba and those protesters, including Cuban-American Senator Marco Rubio. As one defector told our CBS Miami affiliate, seeing those protests was, quote, magical. Anne-Marie?
Well, speaking of that, do we know what the latest is on the ground in Cuba now?
That's something we will have to monitor. We don't know at this point whether those protests will be allowed to continue. As you saw, that there are already government pushback against those demonstrations. So today will be a day to see maybe who has been arrested, how those people are being treated, whether the internet is being restored on the island because it was knocked out in several parts as those demonstrations were happening. So there are a lot of questions, of course, about what's happening there. But you can imagine that here in Miami, these people who have come out here to support those protesters may be out here again expressing their support.
Let me ask you about that. You point out that the restaurant where you're at is sort of the epicenters of the heartbeat of the Cuban.
So did you hear what he said about the internet? He said that, the internet is being cut, right? Let's take a look over here. So if you just do a quick look at this. This is from CBS. Sorry, this is from ABC, not CBS. This is from ABC, but you can find this from various other outlets. What did it say? Cuba's internet cut off, a go-to tactic to suppress dissent. So we've seen this before, right? In other countries. For example, during the Arab Spring, you had, I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was both Tunisia and Egypt who shut down the internet. Why? Because people were using Twitter, they were using Facebook, they were using social media to organize protests, right? Incidentally, when they were doing this in Iran in 2009, the State Department in the US went and specifically requested from Twitter not to do maintenance on the website, to keep it online, basically, just to make sure that people can continue organizing protests and you know, sowing dissent on Twitter. So they know very well that it can be a vehicle for, you know, insurrections, right? This is a word that they love. And anyway, I just want to point one thing out. So here they're saying, oh, look, this is a go-to tactic for dissent, right? Oh, look at these dictators. They just go and shut off the internet. They do a complete blackout when it suits them. Okay, here's a counterpoint. I remember in Syria, during the Arab Spring, right, the government unblocked Facebook, YouTube, all of these social media sites in the middle of the Arab Spring. Right? Meanwhile, in Egypt, Tunisia, they were blocking social media. They were blacking out the internet. Do you think that they reported about that? Have you ever heard about that? I'm telling you because I saw that with my own eyes. I was there. Have you ever heard about that from the media? Of course not. Right? Here, they tell you that the internet's cut off. Have you ever heard about the blackout in Syria? This is after the war's already started, right? So when they unblocked the internet, they unblocked Facebook and YouTube in Syria. This is beginning 2010, 2011, right? And then a few years later, the Americans completely they crashed the entire internet in Syria for a day. They tell you about that? Of course not, right? So this is just a small point I wanted to make. They'll point this out when a country does it, but they won't point out the reverse, right? So they only report negative things. They never report anything else. It's just worth noting. Now, do you remember this article over here from what is this? I mean, Biden was saying this during his campaign, his presidential campaign, but this article over here is from March, right? So, excuse me, April. From last year, right? So what are they saying here during the presidential campaign? They're saying Biden says he would return to Obama-era relations with Cuba. What does that mean? That means that, you know, Barack Obama, he opened up a new chapter of relations with Cuba, right? So you have to understand, for 50, 60 years, right, since the Cold War, the Americans don't have relations with Cuba, right? For a wide variety of reasons. They refuse to recognize the communist government. They refuse to recognize the revolution. Then you had the Cuban Missile Crisis, right, which I'm sure they teach you about, but they don't teach you about the Bay of Pigs, do they? Right? So this is when the Americans, the CIA particularly, tried to organize a coup. Well, they didn't try to organize a coup. They organized the coup. It just failed. And they sent a bunch of exiles and etc. They basically tried to get these people to overthrow to invade Cuba and overthrow the government, right? So multiple times they tried to assassinate Castro. I lost count how many times. There's multiple books about this. You know, they've been bullying Cuba for a long time, and of course it's been under embargo, right? Maybe you've seen in movies sometimes. Is that a Cuban cigar? Because they're not allowed. Right? But it's much worse than that. It's not about cigars. They don't tell you about what the embargo does to a country, what sanctions do. That they don't tell you. But now Donald Trump, he gets into office and he reverses what Obama did, right? So Obama had reestablished ties with Cuba. There's no more embargo. Trump comes in. He's like, no, this is all out the window. I'm going to start the maximum pressure campaign. He does this with every country, right? So the maximum pressure campaign is a sick, sadistic way of starving people to death, of depriving them of medicine, right? Depriving them of money, of foreign currency, depriving them of being able to interact with other countries and engage in commerce and trade and finance. And what does that mean? That means that they, in the case of Yemen, for example, most of the food there is imported, and it's not done through NGOs. It's done through companies, right? So you put sanctions on Yemen, on Ansar Allah, which is what Trump and Pompeo did in the last days of the administration. You're basically starving the entire nation after they've already starved Yemen to death. And, Trump targets Iran's oil sector, banking sector. He targets Syria with the Caesar Act sanctions in June of last year. And he targets Venezuela with more sanctions. And he targets, of course, Cuba with more sanctions. Right? And Biden says, "Oh no, I'm going to return to Obama era. I'm going to do what Obama did." Right? I'm not like Trump. I'm going to reestablish ties with Cuba. I'm going to lift the embargo. Where is it? This guy's been in office for 6 months now. 6 months. Okay? With Yemen, he acted pretty quickly, although the U.S. is still supporting Saudi Arabia in various other capacities. They already have enough blood on their hands. It's too late. It's too little, too late. Here, they've done absolutely nothing, right? Biden says he would return to Obama-era relations with Cuba. And then what does the White House say? What does the White House say over here? Look at this. This is from April. This is from April this year. The White House says, a shift in policy on Cuba, not one of Biden's top priorities. So that was Jen Psaki, the White House spokesperson, right? Do you see how many times they've lied? Do you see how much they lie, these bastards? Look how much they lie. I want to say Donald Biden, because that's literally my point. There's no difference between them. Joe Biden is no different from Trump. And I told you about this. I told you, I said it a million goddamn times. There's no difference between these two, nor their predecessors, right? The main foreign policy of the United States is treating other countries who don't do as they say with animosity, right? Bullying them. Look at the Abraham Accords that Trump signed, right? Normalizing ties between Israel and Bahrain and the UAE. He moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and recognized Jerusalem as the Israeli capital in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. This is illegal international law. Do you think Biden reversed that? No. Has Biden reversed the sanctions against Syria? No. Has Biden stopped supporting Saudi Arabia entirely? No. Has Biden lifted sanctions on Iran? No. Has he re-entered the nuclear deal? No. Has Biden lifted sanctions on Cuba? No. How is he different from Trump? Dude, for someone who's living in Cuba, who's living in Syria, they wouldn't know if the president changed or not. And this is what's so messed up. American presidents, American governments affect non-Americans more than the Americans. People around the world are more affected by what the United States does than its own citizens. This is a fact. This is the truth. And now what's happening with Cuba, what you have to understand is that, Cuba, they're the first country in Central Latin America to have developed the first COVID-19 vaccine. The first, right? And they do this, under embargoes. So they've developed a vaccine and they don't have enough syringes. And because of this embargo, they cannot import syringes. Again, you have to understand something, man. This is not an exaggeration. Perhaps to some people listening, this sounds so outlandish. Like, what? What do you mean they can't get syringes? Yes, they cannot get syringes. It's much worse than that. The U.S. is blocking them from getting ventilators as well. Because the way it works is that if the Cuban government wants to buy syringes from a company, right? The U.S. says, hey, if you sell syringes to Cuba, we're going to fine you. If you have assets, if you have accounts, if you have anything in the United States, we're going to take it from you. We'll confiscate it. We'll fine you. We'll even put you in jail. You can go to jail, right? So this is how sanctions work. It's basically pressuring companies, entities, other countries not to trade, not to engage with the governments you're targeting, right? And who suffers? It's the people who suffer. So, meanwhile, America is doing this crap. Look at what Cuba is doing. Cuba is sending doctors around the world to help fight the pandemic. The United States sends Marines basically they send their armed forces and contractors and mercenaries around the world. They put around military bases around the world. They make war, and Cuba sends doctors. That's the difference. That's the difference. And what's astonishing is that you have you had the United States angry at countries who accepted doctors from Cuba. See this? This is from AfricaNews.com. All right, so here, the U.S. criticizes South Africa for accepting Cuban doctors. Can you imagine that? This is when? This is from last year in April. So Cuba sends doctors everywhere, and the U.S. was going around and pressuring them not to take in those doctors. Like as if, I mean, this is so twisted and evil. Like what? They're literally doctors. And, of course, Trump, he comes out and calls them slaves. Yeah, other countries do nice things, and the U.S. just comes and tries to denigrate that, to destroy it, discredit it. I don't know what to say, man. It's awful. Here's some more stuff, right? So Cuba sent 2,000 doctors and nurses overseas to fight COVID-19. Cuba beat the pandemic from developing new vaccines to sending doctors overseas. These are various headlines I'm reading to you, right? And there's the difference. That's what the U.S. has done underneath. So it's really interesting when in these reports, they come and say like, oh, you see, Cuba, they've failed to contain the pandemic, and the entire economic situation is because of the pandemic. No. It's not just from the pandemic. The sanctions are doing a hell of a lot worse to the country than the pandemic. And again, as a matter of fact, they've handled it quite well, especially compared to you and many other countries, right? So, I mean, this is really incredible, right? So just as I was telling you here, they've deprived Cuba of syringes, right? This is from MR Online. This is Cuba. So the U.S. blocks coronavirus aid shipment from Asia to Cuba. Again, this is from last year in April, right? So this is ongoing. This is not just now. And Biden has lifted none of this. Absolutely none of this. And again, it's astonishing to me how these Americans, and not just Americans, they're European allies, they'll come and say, we stand with the people of Cuba. We stand with the people of Syria. We stand with the people of Yemen. We stand with the people of Iran. Oh, and by the way, here's some sanctions. Go starve to death. Here's some bombs. Why don't you go and die in under the rubble of our Hellfire missiles? Really? That's what standing with the people of Cuba means? Depriving them of syringes? How sick and twisted is that? That's what standing with the people of Syria means? You send them Al-Qaeda to kill them? No thanks. Go stand alone. No one wants you to stand with them. So you have this little rat over here, Marco Rubio, right? Who of course is promoting these protests in Cuba, and of course you have Blinken. Antoine Blinken, mon ami, vas-y, on va t'écouter un peu là. Let's listen to what he has to say.
They criticized Cuba's authority. Over the weekend, tens of thousands of Cubans took to the streets on the island to exercise their rights to assemble peacefully and express their views. The protesters called for freedom and human rights. They criticized Cuba's authoritarian regime for failing to meet people's most basic needs, including food and medicine. In many instances, peaceful protesters were met with repression and violence. The Biden-Harris administration stands by the Cuban people and people around the world who demand their human rights and who expect governments to listen to and serve them rather than try to silence them. Peaceful protesters are not criminals, and we join partners across the hemisphere and around the world in urging the Cuban regime to respect the rights of the Cuban people to determine their own future, something they have been denied for far too long. Over the weekend,
I mean, this is incredible how many lies he can fit into 1 minute, right? It's part of the job application. It's not how many words can you type per minute, it's how many lies can you fit into a minute, right? So, I mean, several things here, man. The Cuban people have already, they've exercised their right to self-determination. You're the one who's trying to stop them, right? They've had a revolution for over 60 years. They're quite happy with it. And he's a goddamn liar, because this is what the United States does. They try to, okay, first of all, about the violence. I just want to say one thing. You cannot show me one clip, right? One clip from Cuba right now of anything that comes close to what happened during the George Floyd protests. Dude, the George Floyd protests, they were spraying people with some kind of weird pesticide shit. I don't even know what that was. The NYPD was literally running over people with their cars. You remember that, right? They were plowing through crowds, through crowds of people in broad daylight. You saw this. It was filmed on the ground from atop, right? You saw how people literally just kneeling, are suddenly just, they're pulled up by 3 officers. They're just dragged away. Have you seen anything like that in Syria or in Cuba, as they're saying right now? Not even close. Do you remember that old guy, the 70-year-old who the Buffalo Springs police just pushed for no reason? Literally no reason. They cracked his skull. Have you ever seen anything like that? You dare to talk about government crackdowns and regime violence? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. I mean, this hypocrisy is unreal. It is unreal. They dare to talk about human rights. My goodness. My goodness. And then, of course, what happens, man? He says here that tens of thousands of people have come out to protest against the Cuban regime, right? They can't say Cuban government. No, they have to say regime, right? To delegitimize it, to portray it as authoritarian, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, man, I want to make something clear. You can go to any country in the world that the United States claims is in an uprising. You can go to Syria. You can go to Iran. You can go to Venezuela. You can go to Cuba. And of course, you will find people who don't like the government. This is normal. This is normal. But just because you have some people there, that doesn't mean it's the majority. And this is where the US media, the corporate media steps in. What do they do, man? Number one, they lie. They lie about the effect of sanctions. They don't tell you that there are sanctions. People who watch this, they have no clue what sanctions are if they watch the mainstream media. They have no clue the devastation that it inflicts on these countries, right? They lie about the sanctions. They don't tell you that this is the US fault, the EU's fault. And then what do? They take the discontent of a minority in the country and they amplify it so big to make you think, to make you believe that everyone in Cuba hates the government now, all of them, right? And then they don't show you the people who actually support the government. Look, man, again, I don't care about your opinion. It's not about my opinion, anyone's opinion. This is about reporting. You can't come here and claim to cover Iran or cover Syria or cover Cuba or Venezuela and hide that the majority of the population likes the government. Dude, that's not reporting anymore. Look at this. You remember with Syria? Look what they did with Syria. Did you see any of this on mainstream media? Did you see any of this after the elections? Right? You remember how many people were celebrating Bashar al-Assad's victory? Enormous crowds. I mean, I cannot even keep up. They were in Damascus, in Umayyad Square, Saht al-Amawin, in the port city of Tartus, all over the country. Did you see any of that on mainstream media? No, because this is not accurate reporting. They're liars. It's propaganda, right? And here they're doing the same thing with Cuba. They're trying to take a few thousand people, whatever the number is, and make you think that it's the whole country. It's not the whole country. This is ridiculous. Look at this. Look how they're lying. This is from Asa Winstanley. So he's a great friend. He's been on the show before, Electronic Intifada. Look what he said here. He quoted something from The Guardian, okay? He says, sure, Guardian, makes total sense that, quote, anti-government, unquote, protesters would fly the flag of Fidel Castro's 26th July movement. You see here? They're literally running out of material to make up these lies about, oh, look, it's a revolution all of a sudden. Oh, my God, there are so many people. They have so little proof. They're literally using photos of people who support the government, who are flying the flag of the revolution. Look, here's more. This is from Rose on Twitter. Quote, what the U.S. media tries to spin as mass uprisings against socialism in Cuba versus the actual real-life mass socialist movement in Cuba that the U.S. media will tell any lie to stop you from finding out about, right? So they'll show you what's on the left, but they won't show you what's on the right, ever. And this is the exact same playbook with Syria, with Iran, with Venezuela, the same goddamn playbook. Every single time. Underneath, Rosa continues, there are about 11 million people in Cuba, and over 1 million of them are literally in the march, depicted in the photo on the right, up here. The people of Cuba overwhelmingly support the socialist revolution and will fight to defend it. So down here, this from Telesur. Once Cuban President Diaz-Canel called the revolutionaries to seize the streets, to take to the streets. Hundreds filled downtown Havana to chase away groups that have gathered to stage protests against the revolution. I mean, you won't see any of this. Why don't they show you this on TV or in print? Why are they so afraid of showing you the truth? Right? Why are they so afraid? So again, this is the job of the mainstream media. They never ever show you the popular support, and they take a small fraction of a fringe of the society, and make it out to be something enormous. Right? So that way, when they start a war, you're like, yeah, well, this is good. Look, they're going to help the majority of Cubans who want a revolution, a revolution against the current government, right? Oh, look, I'm so happy that we're bombing Syria. That's what people in Syria want. This is brainwashing. This is brainwashing. This is how they make you acquiesce. They make you fall asleep. They turn your brain to mush. Right? This is how they lobby for intervention, right? This is how they'll go to the UN. They'll try every means possible, right? They'll try anything in the book to get foreign troops there, right? On top of sanctions. And sanctions is part of that too, right? If they can't get troops there, they'll starve you to death. And what will they use? They use this crap as a justification, right? And they use it also as an excuse to boost opposition groups. I mean, like, you should see the money that the U.S. has pumped into opposition groups, not just in Cuba, all over the world. Extraordinary, astronomical amounts. Idem for the British government, right? So we know these tactics. It's very important to pay attention to this because, and I feel like this is, at the same time, right? I feel like this is kind of. It's a weird disclaimer that we have to say this, right? Like, if I come here and I show you, look, the United States has a history of trying to overthrow the Cuban government. The United States has a history of trying to plot assassinations and trying to invade and trying to topple the Cuban nation. I don't need to put a disclaimer and say, but hey, man, at the same time, the government has done such and such. These people try to be like, they pretend to be objective or something or neutral. Like, yeah, I disagree with U.S. interventionism, but you know what Assad has done? Oh my God, do you know what Maduro has done? Look, I don't, that's not the point here, okay? That's not the point here. If you dislike someone, that doesn't mean and they're a bad person, they happen to be a bad person, or whatever you've accused them of, that doesn't mean you can go and murder them because you say that they are such and such. You can't do that. The same here with the U.S. The U.S. cannot go violating other countries' sovereignty because they say that the leader of this country did such and such. I don't give a shit. You have to respect the sovereignty of these countries. We're not fucking discussing this or debating this. It's not a fucking discussion. If you have a problem with that, if you think this is debatable, you are a fucking colonizer. You're imperialist scum. So let's be very clear here, right? What the U.S. is doing in all these countries, what it's doing to the axis of resistance, to Yemen, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, Syria, this is evil. This is imperialism. They're trying to meddle in these countries and they're manufacturing consent. They're absolutely lying. The entire government, bipartisanship, every single channel you turn on, they are lying to you about what is happening there. Right? They have a long history of trying to screw with Cuba. Long history. Goes without saying. Right? Everyone should know this. This is Cold War History 101. And now it doesn't change, right? They never stop. So I think this is disgusting. You must always exercise caution and nuance when you hear anything about Syria or Iran or Venezuela or Cuba or Yemen in the mainstream media, especially in the Anglosphere. Because 99% of the time, it is fucking horseshit and it's lies. Again, this is not me saying that. If I didn't exist, it would still be lies. They have a history of lying. They have a history of making up the most ridiculous claims. They lied about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. If they lied about that, they'll lie about anything. And they do. They lie about literally everything. So just always remember, when you say, oh, look, these government protests, oh my God, the people they're rising up against it. Dude, look at the documents from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the UK, the FCO, how they set up all these groups, Zinc, the Integrity Initiative, Zinc, Incostrat, ARC, and then they created the White Helmets. They literally did this to wage a propaganda war, to make it look like there's more support for this so-called revolution, that, oh, look at these crimes, even the made-up chemical attacks that the government has done. They do this all the time. They've done this with Russia as well. I covered that with Max Blumenthal, with Chris Williamson, how they're doing an entire campaign of disinformation against Russia, right? They always talk about, oh, Russian disinformation. No, it's them actually who are doing it. Everything they accuse other countries of, they are doing. Britain is doing it. The US is doing that, and to a degree that is astronomical. Astronomical. So we really have to be careful here. This is a long-ass segment, but it requires a long-ass segment because, you know, these people, they have no shame. And I just want to finish with one thing over here. Oh, God. I mean, look at this. Look what Len Khodorkovsky says on Twitter. Quote, when oppressed people around the world express their desire for a better life, note the symbol they pick. Right? What do we have over here? We have people in Cuba, Iran, Venezuela, and Hong Kong marching with American flags. Right? So you won't be surprised to learn that this person over here, Len, he used to work for the State Department, right? So I find this honestly hilarious. You know, if he wasn't a propagandist, he was just an average person, I would think, man, you're so close. You're so close. You're right over you're just about to get over the finish line, but you just don't quite finish. This is some people in the comments basically said, this is how CIA employees identify each other. Yeah. Yeah. And then you had some nut job over here, some guy I think who's running for Congress, right? So is he running? No, it says representative. Yeah, so he's already elected. Look what he says. He's in Florida. Never heard of this guy. He says, this is Anthony Sabatini. He says, high-ranking communist officials in Cuba should be given an ultimatum now. Either immediately assist in the transition of government away from communism or be prosecuted and executed thereafter. Holy shit. Holy shit. And you dare to talk about authoritarianism in other countries? What the fuck is that? I love how you as a U.S. official or a European official, you could just go on Twitter and fucking threaten to bomb and execute the ministers, the dignitaries of other countries. Remember Trump, he said, I'm going to bomb Iran's cultural sites, which is not just an attack on Iran, it's literally an attack on numerous UNESCO World Heritage sites. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, sure, you can leave that up, right? That's totally not an incitement to violence, right? Dude, he's literally threatening executions. What the fuck? This is some ISIS shit. And you want us to believe that these people are interested in democracy? Oh, man. I can't deal with people who drink the Kool-Aid, really. I really try my best to, but, you know. Anyway. Ooh-wee, man. Ooh-wee. Don't worry, we're not done at all. As a matter of fact, hey, we have our 400th Patreon who just signed up right now. Ian, thank you so much. That's a sizable, generous contribution as well. I think you picked the yearly thing, right? Yes. So I enabled yearly sign up, so you can support the show monthly, or you can sign up for a full year in advance. I think there's like a 5% discount. Anyway, Ian, I want to thank you so much, and I want to play a crab dance for you. This is a brand new crab dance, man. I've been waiting to unveil this bad boy. So here we go. Y'all put your hands together for Ian. Let's go, baby.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انت كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
Why you text in? Why, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
That was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. Did you guys catch Chef Fauzi? Yo, man, that clip of Netanyahu when he's talking to Ted Cruz. Thank you, right? Because they're such cucks, the Americans, to the Israelis. Anyway, that was just hilarious. Guys, thank you so much. I cannot believe this. Look at this. Just check this out. This is unreal. We have finally hit 400 members on Patreon. You guys are the best. Like, there's literally no competition. I cannot explain how grateful I am for your continued support. I cannot explain. I cannot verbalize. I cannot possibly put into words how grateful I am for all of your support. This is really amazing. Thank you to everyone who's supporting anti-imperialist journalism in any way, even if you're just liking or commenting, whatever it is, man, sharing the videos. This all counts. This is how we defeat corporate media. This is how we defeat these nonsense colonial mindset narratives. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much. And if you want to support the show, it's patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. By the way, you can also do this on PayPal and other stuff. I'm going to put that up right now. No, this is really amazing. This calls for a celebration. Also, we hit 40,000 subscribers. I mean, this is unreal. This calls for a celebration, man. It really does. Thank you guys so much. I'm so grateful. I could not do this without you. So really, hats off to you guys. And I'm looking at the comment section. You guys are absolutely hilarious. Look at all these crabs down there. Oh my God, I love you. Okay, I'm going to read some of your super chats before we continue. We have a bunch of super chats in the chat on YouTube. Let's see what's up over here. This one is from Jim. Jim says, Rick Sanchez did a horrific segment on this. Well, I have not seen that yet, and by the sounds of it, I shouldn't. Vito says, it's like 2019 Hong Kong all over again. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's multiple comparisons that we can make here, right? And it's always the UK and the US behind them. So hold on, I'm trying to switch back to me. It won't go. All right, here we go. I'm back. I'm just reading your super chats. So we got another one from David Sorabi. There's no comment, but thank you very much, David. You're very kind. And man, seriously, I can't stop laughing at that crab dance. That was unreal. We got another one over here from Emblemed Fate. Good to see you, Emblemed Fate. Says, the mainstream media ignored the biggest protest in history in India. And the second, a couple of right-wing Cubans protest socialism, they suddenly care. If Cuba was hell like Libya and Iraq are today, they would never talk about it in the news. Yeah, absolutely on all your points. And, I just wanted to say also what's been happening in Colombia, right? I mean, you don't hear anything about that, right? When people are protesting against the U.S. in Haiti or in Colombia, wherever it is, you never hear about that. When people are protesting in support of their governments, which are targeted for regime change, you never hear about that. Man, I really laugh when people have the gall, they got the stones to talk about, oh, these countries are so totalitarian, right? Iran, Syria, there's no freedom of the press. Motherfucker, have you seen your goddamn networks? Do people in the UK ever actually pause for a second and think of the bullshit they're being fed? Same thing in the US, France, Germany. You have the stones. You got like all of the media corporations, right? They're not even outlets. They're literally corporations. They're just owned by six companies. I mean, it's astonishing that they have the stones then to talk about this. Really, just zero shame. So everything they accuse other countries of is projection. Always remember that. Again, I don't want to make this disclaimer. I feel like it's such like a colonial mindset, right? They make you say it like as if it's even comparable. Dude, you shouldn't have to make this disclaimer that, oh, well, such and such is bad, but U.S. imperialism is also bad. No, I don't have to say such and such is bad in the first place. The crimes of the U.S. empire and the proxies that they fund, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Contras, whatever, you name it, it surpasses, it exceeds any single thing that you could possibly come up with regarding the governments that they target. It's incomparable. It's not a fucking debate here. If the people who are having this debate, they're either doing this for entertainment or they're lunatics, right? So anyway, that was a long ass segment on Cuba, and it still wouldn't be long enough with all the crap that the West has done to them, honestly. So let's continue here. We have a lot of important things in addition to Cuba that we must look at. So, right. I've been waiting to cover this, man. I've been waiting to cover this. Right. So, as we've seen, there have been numerous case updates regarding Julian Assange. The United States has been granted limited permission to appeal the decision of Judge Baretzer not to extradite Julian Assange. A key witness for the U.S. prosecution, nicknamed Siggy the Hacker, who's from Iceland, admits that he lied about Julian Assange in order to paint him as a cyber criminal, as a hacker, and that there was a conspiracy to commit computer intrusion and so on, right? So these are two major developments. There's another one regarding the British courts and WikiLeaks, which I'll have more for you very soon. And here we have another update. So the United States has said that they are willing to allow Julian Assange to serve his sentence in Australia, perhaps. And another assurance that they're trying to give the British courts is that they will not place Julian Assange under special administrative measures. Now hold on right there, because the mainstream media is reporting it like that. Like, oh, look, the United States is not going to put him under special administrative measures. No, that's not what the U.S. is saying. They're saying they might not. And they reserve the right to put him under special administrative measures. It's a worthless reassurance. It means literally nothing. And we're going to go through why. So this is from the New York Times. Okay. If a British court permits the extradition of the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to face criminal charges in the United States, the Biden administration has pledged that it will not hold him under the most austere conditions reserved for high security prisoners. No, again, it said it might not that it will not, right? Continuing, and that if he is convicted, it will let him serve his sentence in his native Australia. Those assurances were disclosed on Wednesday as part of a British High Court ruling in London. The court accepted the United States government's appeal of a ruling that had denied its extradition request for Mr. Assange, who was indicted during the Trump administration on the grounds that American prison conditions for the highest security inmates were inhumane, right? Now, let me show you. This is what from the Crown Prosecution Service, okay? So they're saying on what grounds the U.S. will be allowed to appeal. Again, this is why we talk about a limited appeal, right? So the United States says we want to appeal A, B, C, D, E, whatever. Literally A, B, C, D, E. And then the High Court says, no, we can allow you to appeal this point and this point, but we're not letting you appeal this point, right? So some points they've allowed and some points they haven't. The points that they did allow the U.S. to appeal are A, B, and E, okay? So the most important one, well, they're all important, obviously, but relating to what we just read, ADX, you can see here, ADX is, so you have to understand something, right? If Assange is sent to the U.S., he'll be placed in pretrial before he's even convicted by this corrupt court in Alexandria, which is, again, it's an inhumane prison. He'll be in administrative segregation. This is where they had Chelsea Manning, and she tried to take her life. It's horrendous. And if he's convicted, because the jury pool is made up of CIA people and you know, CIA spooks, so they'll most likely certainly convict him, he'll be sent to ADX Florence, which is the only federal super maximum prison in the U.S. Federal. They still have other super maximum prisons, right? But this is the last federal one. And this is where they put the shoe bomber. This is where they put, you know, the worst of the worst. You know, you have to ask yourself, why the hell is a journalist being sent there? Why is Julian Assange being placed with the worst criminals in the United States? Why should he be in any jail? And we can already ask these questions, and we already do in the UK. Why is Julian Assange in any jail to begin with? And on top of that, in Belmarsh Prison, which is, you know, in the UK, you have prisons categorized from A to, I think, D, and A being the most high security. What is he doing in Belmarsh Prison? This just shows you it's political. It's political. That's what it is. So over here, I'll read you E. The fifth ground is the United States has provided the United Kingdom with a package of assurances which are responsive to the district judge's specific findings in this case. In particular, the United States has provided assurances that Mr. Assange will not be subject to SAMs, Special Administrative Measures, or imprisoned at ADX, unless he were to do, here's the best part, right? Unless he were to do something subsequent to the offering of these assurances that meets the test for the imposition of SAMs or designation to ADX. The United States has also provided an assurance that the U.S. will consent to Mr. Assange being transferred to Australia to serve any custodial sentence imposed on him. So several points here. Several points. Now, some of you might be wondering, what are special administrative measures? Again, I've covered this extensively during the extradition hearing. In the United States, this is the worst thing that can happen to you, right? As a prisoner. I mean, Bill Clinton came up with this in the 90s. It's a regime under which prisoners are placed in solitary confinement. You're never allowed any contact with other prisoners, let alone your family. You will never see the sun again. You are in your cell, I think it's 23 hours a day. You're allowed one 30-minute phone call a month or two 15-minute phone calls, and you have to notify 2 weeks in advance so that the FBI can get an agent to make sure, to monitor what you're saying. Again, that's not like we think they're monitoring. No, this is outlined. All the telephone calls are monitored. Your conversations with your lawyers are monitored. Your lawyers are placed under a gag order. So, your lawyer could come and visit you in a supermax, and they're not allowed to talk about the condition that you're in. They're not allowed to say any of this. The United States has the stones to talk about human rights. They have the stones to talk about a free press, about democracy. They're trying to put a journalist in the same conditions they put Al-Qaeda people in. I mean, this alone tells you everything you need to know. Unbelievable. So this is special administrative measures. You want to see what a cell looks like? Here you can have an idea. So you'll be locked in one of these for the rest of your life, right? Very nice, right? Very democratic. So I want to play you a clip over here from Assange's partner, Stella Morris. And she responded to this so-called proposition from the US. And then I also have some things to add from court, and you'll see.
This video because I'm reading a lot of misleading reports and commentary on social media and news reports about what the current status is. And I'm really disappointed because what's happened is that the DOJ has given a statement to some press, and the press has published it unquestioningly without asking specialists in assurances and without actually asking some critical questions. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. But let's first remember where we're at. Julian won his case in January, and the US is now appealing that victory. And it is telling the UK that it will not place in Julian under certain conditions. But let's first remember what this is all about. Julian is being prosecuted for journalistic activities, pure and simple, receiving, possessing, and communicating to the public information that he received from a journalistic source. He is being prosecuted and criminalized for acts of journalism. So any so-called undertakings by the United States are laughable because the United States should not be putting journalists in prison in the first place. But when you come to the undertakings, you see that they're not worth the paper they're written on because they're not even enforceable. The US has said that they don't intend to put Julian in ADX Florence or put him under a regime called SAMs. SAMs is the condition where they put you, basically bury you alive, where you cannot speak to your friends or your family, and even your lawyers are gagged from talking about how you are, what your conditions are, or your case basically in public. And ADX is just one of many supermax prisons. So when the US says we're not going to place him in ADX. They are not saying that they will not place him in Supermax.
Right? So that's an extremely important point. Just to interject quickly. ADX is a prison, right? In Colorado. And it's the last federal Supermax. You have other Supermax prisons. They're not federal, but they still exist, right? If I'm not mistaken, MCC is one of them in New York. And incidentally, the former warden of that prison, Baird was her name, right? So she gave testimony during the extradition hearing, right? I covered it on the channel. And she explained, literally the prison warden, I think she knows. She explained how inhumane this thing is. And again, I'll continue. I just want to let Stella finish, of course, and then, I'll break down more things. Yeah.
There are multiple prisons that they could choose from. Regardless of those points, it's not actually up to the Department of Justice or the Bureau of Prisons about where they're going to place Julian, because even in their documents to the United Kingdom, they say that this could change once he's in US custody, because in consultation with the head of the CIA may decide that actually he should go to SAMS and he should go to ADX. The CIA is the same agency that is behind its agents plotting to kill Julian in the embassy, kidnap him, targeting his lawyers, spying on his legal meetings, even targeting our 6-month-old baby. So does anyone doubt that this agency would not recommend putting Julian in special administrative measures once he's in the United States? Then there's an undertaking about Australian custody, that once he's in the US, he can serve out his sentence in Australia. Actually, prisoner transfers, and in this case as well, would only take place once he had exhausted all the appeals mechanisms. That means that as long as the case is in the courts, which could take a decade or even 2 to reach the Supreme Court, Julian would remain in a US prison under atrocious solitary confinement, atrocious conditions that the magistrate's court judge said would end his life.
Right, so very important points there. I remember this from the defense arguing this in court, that it's not up to the Department of Justice to decide whether he's placed under SAMS. This is the CIA director, and it's at the discretion of the CIA director and the Attorney General, right? They're the ones who decide. We know that they want to put Julian Assange under SAMS. They were arguing to do that in court. Dude, I remember listening to them explaining how, oh no, SAMs are not as bad as you say they are, right? That's the first argument they made, that SAMs are not that bad, right? They tried to discredit Maureen Baird, who's this, again, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's the former warden of MCC, right? Where it's in New York. And she oversaw a special administrative measures regime. They tried to discredit her, like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. SAMs are not so bad. And then they tried to say, also, there's an appeals process. You have like a 4-step program where you can improve your conditions in the prison, subject to good behavior and things like that. And then the defense and the expert witnesses called by the defense were arguing, yeah, but that's never happened. There is literally no one who's ever been successful with these so-called appeals under SAMs to get, and it's there's no gray area when it comes to SAMs. It's a very strict regimen. These are the conditions. That's it. I want to play you very quickly a clip from, this is literally from ADX Florence, the former, ADX Florence in Colorado. This is the former warden, Robert Hood, okay? So listen to what he says. He was running the prison that they want to put Assange in. So he would know. Okay, take a look. This is from a CNN documentary.
Like Ramzi Youssef, the 1990. We're looking at people like Ramzi Youssef, the 1993 world trade bomber. Timothy McVeigh was there. Nichols is still there. The shoe bomber, the Unabomber, you can go on and on. You're designing it so the inmates can't see the sky, intentionally. When it really hits you is that you're looking at the beauty of the Rocky Mountains in the backdrop. When you get inside, that's the last time you'll ever see it. As you're pulling up to this complex, there's shotguns in plain view, there's 9mm on this tear gas, they're going by 12 gun towers, and that's before you even say hello to anyone. You'll be in leg irons, a belly chain, handcuffs, and you're passing hundreds of cameras. It's almost all concrete. You're going to be in that box, these 84 square feet of room, most likely for the rest of your life, in my opinion, far much worse than death. You're looking at people.
You heard the man. He said far worse than death. That's the guy who was running the prison. He knows, I would say. Far worse than death. That's what it's like being there. That's where they want to send a journalist. You call that a democracy? You call that a democracy? This guy, Assange, is not American. He never done any of these crimes they're accusing him of in the first place. Never mind in America. They're trying to reach over the Atlantic and kidnap him and put him here. We know in court from the expert witnesses from the defense that it's the CIA who hate Assange's guts because he exposed their crimes about rendition and kidnapping and torture, that they can decide, the director will decide to put him under SAMS. If you look at this assurance, so-called assurance, which as Stella correctly points out, is not even worth the paper that it's written on, look what they say. They say that he'll not be subject to SAMS or imprisoned at ADX unless he were to do something subsequent to the offering of those assurances that meets the test for the imposition of SAMS or designation to ADX. So they're saying that it's subject to good behavior, basically. You know, if he behaves, then we won't put him under SAMS. Okay, let me tell you a story that, again, this is from court, right? When I was in London. This was brought up by the defense. This was brought up by Lewis, Madam Lewis, who is the lawyer, okay, the defense lawyer for Abu Hamza. Abu Hamza is locked up in ADX, in this jail, okay? As I told you, they monitor your conversations, your letters going in, going out, your phone calls, your conversations with your lawyers. Abu Hamza, told someone in his family, give my love to my grandson. Something like that, I'm paraphrasing. He just said something completely mundane and trivial, like give my love to my grandson. Okay? His grandson is literally 1 year old. Do you know what the US did? They accused him of saying something in code. Like they said that, oh, he's transmitting a message in code to his 1 year old grandson. They put him under SAMS for another year because he said, give my love to my grandson. And you expect them to treat Assange fairly? Look, they're literally saying here, yeah, he won't be under SAMS unless he were to do something. What, like say, give my love to my kids? Oh my God. This is some I don't know. I don't even know what to call this. It's just barbaric. This is barbaric, honestly. Literally barbaric, archaic. And again, you really have to understand that the United States has a history of unfairly jailing, people, putting them in places like Guantanamo Bay, kidnapping, torturing them. They don't care. And they argued in court that they were going to put Assange in SAMS, and SAMS are not so bad. And that all of these things, there's like an appeal thing. And you know what they said also? The prisoners, they can have recreation. Do you know what recreation is in ADX Florence? You as a prisoner, you can leave your cell to go into another empty cell with literally no one there. That's recreation. There's no medical care, right? Assange has Asperger's, he has depression. He will receive not even a fraction of the medical care that he would get as a free man. In jail, never mind as a free man, right? It's horrific what they're doing, really. You can't trust anything they say. It's all lies. The entire case is built on lies. Why would you trust anything they say? As Stella said, this is literally the organization, the CIA, who would decide whether he can be under SAMS, tried to steal his kid's diaper. They spied on him in the embassy. They were discussing a plot to assassinate him. And you trust them. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about is Gary McKinnon. Gary McKinnon, he's a good friend. I've interviewed him just after the Assange thing, he committed the biggest computer hack in history. He hacked NASA, the Department of Defense, the Air Force, the Navy. I put the whole list up in the interview. It's over here. I forget. There's too many organizations, right? So they tried to extradite him as well, right? This is on my website, RichardMedhurst.com, under the articles section, right? So they tried to extradite him before there was even an extradition treaty. Actually, they were in the process of writing it, right? So this is the same legal framework they're trying to use against Assange that they used against Lori Love. Gary McKinnon was the first one to really to go through this, and he battled it for 10 years. And I want to show you, I asked him a question about these assurances. Take a look, right? So this is my question over here in bold. I said the U.S. Department of Justice gave reassurances that you wouldn't be locked up inside a supermax prison. They have also attempted to downplay this possibility with Julian Assange. Do you believe they are being honest, or will he likely end up in a federal supermax like ADX Florence? And Gary says, the DOJ is never honest. They rely on lies and various forms of pressure tactics. Yes, they offered me a multitude of assurances, but refused to put them in writing, so I wasn't assured. I think they will treat him as badly as they legally can. Gary's extradition was blocked by Theresa May, which is probably the only thing good thing she's ever done, on health grounds, because he has Asperger's and he had already exhausted a high court and everything. Exhausting legal battle. I mean, absolutely crippling legal battle for 10 years. It drains you. This is the whole point. And this is what, thankfully they could not get their hands on him. They also lied and exaggerated about the things he did. They accused him of causing, tons of damage. Complete. Even the hacking thing is not true because a lot of these computers had a blank password. Anyway, Gary McKinnon, Lori Love, they had their extraditions blocked. I'm praying they block Assange's as well. Right? But you have to understand something, that even if they did, this is unfair what they're doing to him. He's been persecuted for a year, for a decade now, for 10 years, right? And what the United States is trying to do now is they're trying to drag out the legal process. Do you understand? This is part of the punishment. We even had that email, that internal memo where they said that the goal is to persecute Assange, to have him jumping from one jurisdiction to the next, even if it's 25 years. This is the point, man. This is the point. They try to break you physically and mentally. They smear you. They lie about you. They vilify you. They paint you as some kind of monster. They accuse you of every crime under the sun. This is because they want to punish you for exposing their war crimes. This is because they want to punish you for telling the truth. And this is what they're trying to do. Just like Stella said, even if, this thing about Australia works out, I mean, this thing could take decades. Also, this point about serving the sentence in Australia. Look, man, of course, a regular jail is better than ADX Florence. But why should he be in any jail? Any jail is unacceptable. Do you understand this? Serving 175 years in Australia is just as unacceptable as serving 175 years in the United States or Britain. They're missing the point here. Do you understand? The guy's a journalist. He didn't commit any crimes. These are standard, common journalistic practices, what he did, right? Soliciting, possessing, disseminating, publishing classified information. Journalists do this all the time. They're trying to go after him because he did an excellent job, right? And WikiLeaks challenges imperialism. That's why they're going after him, and they're trying to drag this out and punish him. So I don't care, if they make these reassurances, which are worth they're worth nothing. They're toilet paper. They're liars. They lied about even Abu Hamza, right? They also, like I said, they punish people. They say, oh, we're going to do this and that. You'll get medical care. Sure. We won't place you under SAMS. And then they screw you. They have a history of doing this, right? As Gary McKinnon can attest to, as Abu Hamza and as numerous other people can attest to. It's not conjecture, it's a fact. They lie. The United States lies. The whole case is built on lies. And so whether Assange serves 175 years in Australia or Britain or on the moon or in ADX Florence, all of them are unacceptable, right? He's already been arbitrarily detained in the embassy, 2 years in Belmarsh. He's not convicted of a crime. People need to remember something. Julian Assange has not been convicted of any crime. Why is a journalist who has not been found guilty of any crime in a maximum security prison in London? Why is the United States trying to kidnap him and put him in a super maximum federal prison? The man is innocent. He's unconvicted. He's convicted of nothing. He's not serving a sentence. He's literally doing nothing in Belmarsh except being punished by the United States and the UK, right? So I also want to raise another point over here. This is from Alexander Mercouris, and he talks a little bit about the United States proposition or reinsurances, as they claim they are. Take a listen. This was on Consortium News. They do wonderful work.
Obviously, it's as John said, these promises the US is making are unenforceable. And as we've seen in the past, they're not to be relied upon anyway. But all of these promises, all of these assurances could have been made to Buritsa at the trial, and they weren't. Now, the Americans are saying, the US government is saying, well, this was because we were taken by surprise. We didn't expect all these issues to be brought up in this way. Now, of course, I don't take that seriously. I can't believe anybody would take that seriously. But if that were true, they had the option then of applying for a postponement. They say, well, you know, we need time to absorb all of this and come up with our responses and say what we want to say. Well, they didn't do that. On the contrary, they opposed every application for a postponement that the defense made. So I don't really see how this is going to hold together at the final appeal hearing. I think that they're going to have serious problems with this particular appeal. Now, this is to say an unusual case is an understatement, but desperate was how you described these grounds of appeal at the beginning, or at least I think that's what you said. That's how they look to me. I think this is going to be extremely difficult come November. And if the High Court decides to allow the appeal and greenlight the extradition on the basis of these grounds of appeal, well, firstly, that will be disturbing and hopefully subjected to a further appeal to the Supreme Court. But it would also be an extraordinary attempt to push the envelope to try to help the United States out of what is, frankly, a very difficult position legally. So I don't think we should put too much in the fact that they've been granted permission to appeal. And on the face of it, these grounds of appeal don't look at all strong.
Alexander, I want to read you something that Craig Murray, the former British ambassador and blogger, wrote back on January 6th, 2 days after Buritsa's decision, which in hindsight is extremely fascinating now that we know what we know. He wrote, quote, "I am not sure that at this stage, the High Court would accept a new guarantee from the USA that Assange would not be kept in isolation or in a supermax prison. That would be contrary to the affidavit from Assistant U.S. Attorney Gordon Krumberg, and thus would probably be ruled to amount to new evidence." So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that in an appeal, you cannot put forth new evidence. You can only go in the trial. So is this new evidence to this offer not to put him in supermax, is what Craig was suggesting back in January?
It is new evidence, and that actually begs many questions about what the grounds of appeal that have been allowed actually are, because of course it is new evidence. I can't really see how you can come along and say, well, actually, this is what we're going to do. I wonder whether the real thing that's being looked at here, the sort of thin point that they're allowed to say is, well, Buritsa was wrong to go ahead and consider all this evidence about the prison conditions when we weren't given the opportunity to state our case. And if we had been given that opportunity, we would have been able to say all of these things, and all these problems that have been raised could have been allayed. As I said, that comes up with a fundamental problem.
Right, so just quickly before I continue, it's important to understand that, Assange was convicted unfairly of a bail violation. Although he didn't jump bail or violate his bail. He was given political asylum, right, by Ecuador. That's his right under international law. So don't fall for this smear that they try to say about him, right? That's important to note. And he already served the sentence for that, which was the maximum. They gave him the maximum one in Belmarsh, right? So it's a 50 weeks, right? Basically a year. He's already served it long ago. Why is he still there now? He's been 2 years there, right? Anyway, just to continue over here, this is very important to note because, as Alexander is saying, this argument that the United States is making that, oh, look, we won't place him under SAMS if he behaves, which is not an assurance, and he can serve his sentence in Australia. They didn't say this in court. They didn't make this argument in court. This is new evidence, right? As they're saying. And you can only submit new evidence under extraordinary circumstances. So I'm not as qualified as Alexander, of course, but he himself is saying that it's odd that the United States is being given the chance to submit new evidence, usually in an appeal, right? As Joey also is pointing out. Shout out to Joey from Consortium. He's great. And, the U.S. didn't make these arguments in court. So it shouldn't be allowed to raise them in appeal. The appeal, they should be based on things that were said in court. And as Alexander is pointing out, the United States never asked for time to take a break and get their arguments together and then say this. No. So it's really weird. It's really bizarre. But in any case, I really want to highlight how these reassurances by the U.S. are not reassurances. They're worth absolutely nothing. The U.S. has a past of lying about these reassurances, of not following through on them. With Gary, they wouldn't even put them in writing. So, this is very important to note. And it's still absurd even if he were placed in any jail, not just ADX, or even if he were placed in Australia and not the U.S., he should not be in a prison for journalism, right? This is unacceptable. And the mainstream media, the way they're reporting on this is, it's dishonest. Again, they either don't understand the case or they're purposely trying to twist it to make the Biden administration look merciful. No, the United States is not saying we will absolutely not put him under SAMS. They're saying maybe we won't. That's a big, big difference. So there you go. That's the latest update. Okay, so lots of updates on Assange right now. We have a lot of updates. We have a couple of super chats over here. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. Michael says, I'm a libertarian with autism. I just want to say, keep up the good work. You're an inspiration for truth, civil liberties, and freedom. Michael, I'm very humbled. And I noticed that you're back on the... it's nice seeing you again on the show, and I'm very grateful for your kind words and support. Thank you, man. And Revolutionary Drew says, being a revolutionary is being anti-imperialism and anti-oligarchy, etc. Well, this goes without saying. Unfortunately, when we talk about Cuba, what they're trying to do right now, the United States, they've been trying to undermine that revolution since its inception. They wouldn't even recognize the government, right? Every country that is actually independent, that actually undergoes a revolution and breaks away from U.S. global hegemony, they try to shit on them, right? And there's a lot of people who still drink the Kool-Aid, unfortunately, right? They have this mindset that, the U.S. is not doing nice things, but those countries are also bad. You're brainwashed. You're indoctrinated. It's not even comparable. You don't need to make this disclaimer to argue and to point out that the United States and the United Kingdom are bullies. They're the biggest bullies on the planet. It doesn't matter who they're bullying. It's wrong. Do you understand? So anyway, I went off on a bit of a tangent, which is what I do. But thank you, Drew. And Dunny says, just in case you didn't know, Abby Martin, new documentary teaser, Earth Greatest Enemy. I have not seen it just yet, but I'm excited for it. And on Rockfin, we also got a few more tips over here. This is from, I'm scrolling up. This is from Johnny. There's no note, but thank you very much, Johnny. I appreciate it nonetheless. I'm very grateful. We also have some, we got a couple new patrons. We got Jeff And we got Jess. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for signing up for the Patreon. How many are we right now? 402? This is amazing. This is amazing. I cannot believe this. Crab dance incoming just for you. Thank you so much. You guys, you guys absolutely rock. You really do.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard. And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line. Claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحه يعني ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
Why you texting? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Oh, that's brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. I love it. Oh, you guys are the best. Thank you so much. Really. That is absolutely incredible. Hold on a second over here. Hold on a second. Give me a sec. Trying to start this bad boy up again. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for all of your support. Look at this. Look at this, man. We are over 400. I cannot believe this. This is absolutely incredible. This is absolutely insane. Thank you so much. This is a true milestone. Thank you for supporting anti-imperialist journalism. You know, this is how we run counter to the mainstream media bullshit. I cannot do this without you, so I'm very grateful. Thank you so much, everybody. You rock. You absolutely rock. All right, guys, we got knocked out for a second. We're all good. Don't worry. They can't stop us. So I just want to say, thank you very much to everybody. And also, we got something over here from Neil. Neil says, yo, I'm still mad about that press TV shit the government did. Yeah, I'm also mad too. They knocked us out, man. This is what the U.S. does. It's piracy. It's just absolute piracy. And we got something over here from Bello. Bello says the world needs more Richard Medhurst. Yes, it does. And that's why I encourage you guys to stay tuned for the next segment, because we're about to dive right in. So check this out. This is really hilarious what happened here, man. This is absolutely hilarious. Honestly, took me by surprise, but also not really. So, you're going to like this. Joe Biden doing Joe Biden things. Or is he? So, U.S. President Joe Biden. There's an interesting photograph of him that I want to show you. And it really says everything you need to know, right? So here is Uncle Joe kneeling before the Israeli president. Now, this is interesting, man. This is interesting because, I mean, you know that saying, an image is 1,000 words? It really is. It really is. Now, I hate to burst your bubble, but apparently, someone did a fact check. So let's take a look at the fact check. This is from Reuters. They say, photo does not show Biden kneeling before Israeli president, quote, pledging support. So a picture of U.S. President Joe Biden kneeling in front of outgoing Israeli President Rivlin and his chief of staff, Ravitz, has been mislabeled online. Some posts and articles have wrongly said he adopted the pose to, quote, pledge unconditional support to Israel, unquote. But Israeli press widely reported that Biden meant it as a light-hearted show of respect. After learning that Ravitz, who's the chief of staff, right? So she's the woman on the right over here. After learning that Ravitz was the mother of 12 children. Okay. I mean, look, man. Look, the reason that this image stands out is really not because of the quote. Joe Biden, as he once said, I'm quoting here. This is what Joe Biden said. He says, I'm a Zionist. They're all Zionists, man. Every single one of them, right? Kamala Harris is a huge friend of AIPAC. AIPAC is the Israeli lobby in the U.S. Joe Biden is a huge friend of AIPAC in Israel, right? He just said during his meeting that, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. It's right, because they keep pushing this lie that Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapons program. For the love of God, Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program. They have a nuclear program, not a weapons program. Those are two completely different things. God, it's really annoying. So apparently they had to go and debunk this. I don't know why they were saying that. But over here, they say that... Sorry, excuse me. I'm just going to scroll up over here. Right? So I want to point you to a moment with Donald Trump, because it's not for no reason that we mention this, right? It's not about the stupid kneeling, man. It's not about the kneeling. Although I highly doubt if, I highly doubt that if Esma al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad's wife, the Syrian first lady, said she was the mother of 12 children, that Biden would kneel. I highly doubt that. Nonetheless, the Americans, every single president does that, perhaps, not physically, literally, but most certainly in spirit and at heart. Biden has, just like every other U.S. president, has pledged unconditional support to Israel. They all do that. You cannot become a politician in the United States if you don't pledge unconditional support to Israel. You can't. Even Bernie Sanders and the so-called squad, pay attention to what they say. they always say something along the lines of Israelis deserve to live in peace and security, comma, and Palestinians have the right to self-determination, whatever interesting, nice little woke thing they put here, right? They always start out with Israel first, like Israel comes first, and then Palestinians can, like maybe have something similar, but not a state on their own land, right? Palestinians' well-being and human rights and self-determination is always dependent on what Israel and the U.S. want. And if you recall, Donald Trump, just a few months ago, it's a year now. Look how fast the time flies. What did Donald Trump do? Do you recall what he did when he was meeting with Netanyahu, who's bye-bye now? Netanyahu's bye-bye. Here's what Donald Trump did. He gave him a key to the White House. Sometimes they give, like as a symbolic gesture, they give people a key to the city, right? No, Trump gave him a key to the White House. I mean, wow, that kind of says it all, man. It really says it all. Some people were jokingly saying that it's Netanyahu who would give Trump a key to the White House, but they apparently, they've both been kicked out of their seats now, haven't they? Right? They've both been kicked out now. And Netanyahu, though, he says, we'll be back, right? He makes a threat before he leaves, we'll be back. I mean, again, man, this is not so much about the physical gesture. It's more about the policies, about the practices, about the, $3.8 billion in military aid per year that they give the Israelis. It's about the the vilifying of Iran, of Syria, giving Israel a pass and never enforcing any UN Security Council resolutions, right? They're still occupying the Syrian Golan Heights. They're still occupying Palestine. Remember, people forget that Palestine is not the only country under Israeli occupation. Syria is under Israeli occupation since 1967. Of course, the humanitarian situation is nowhere near comparable, right? What the Palestinians are going through is on another level. No one goes through that. But still, they allow the Americans, the Europeans, they allow the Israelis to get away with everything. They literally subsidize their occupation, right? They just gave them more missiles after they depleted all of them against Hamas. They gave them 50 million in December when Trump passed the $600 stimulus check, that relief package back in December, the last one he did. So there's always money for Israel, right? There's no money for healthcare. We have no time to, make sure Palestinians live in peace and security. They don't have a right to self-defense. There's no state. Hey, the Israelis have that. We can give them a key to the White House. Do you see once again, this is especially this topic is further proof how there's no difference between Democrats, Republicans, especially here. You do not become a politician in the United States without pledging unconditional support to Israel. And another point that I wanted to raise, this is when Glenn was interviewing AOC before she got elected, right, for The Intercept. And we watched this interview together here. I've covered it, right? He asked her about what they were doing at the Right to Return marches. So you had these Palestinian crowds that would form every Friday after prayer. The Palestinians were going to the fence and saying, "We want to go home. You stole our homes, our parents' homes, our grandparents' homes. We want to go home." And the Israelis were shooting them, right, in the knees. They were killing them. They were killing medics, journalists, you name it. And Glenn asks AOC, "What do you think of that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?" And AOC, she says she condemns it. Right? And that's surprising because that's a refreshing answer. You never hear someone in U.S. politics condemning Israel. In New York, especially running for Congress in New York. It's impressive, right? But unfortunately, as we all know now, it's just hot air, right? It's just hot air. And again, we're not going to go into all of this, all of the subsequent actions. But, you get the point. So this over here, whether Biden is kneeling or Trump is giving a key to the White House, this is the same crap. It's the same relationship. There you go. So moving on to the next segment. This is a very important one, as is everything else. And again, I'm very grateful for all your donations. I'm going to read all of them at the end. You guys are extraordinary. You are really the best. You're extremely generous and kind. This one is from Jeremy. 1 second. It's loading. It's loading. Still loading. I don't see a note, but thank you, Jeremy. You're very kind. Thank you very much. And yeah, let's go to the next segment. And again, guys, just before I continue, if you want to support the show, this is absolutely incredible. We're at 400 patrons right now. I literally cannot believe this. I really can't believe this. Your kindness is blows me away, and I'm very grateful that you give me the possibility, the opportunity to do this job. There's a real lack of any anti-imperialist outlets. It just doesn't exist, man. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just shoot. All right. So you can just scan those with your phone. Everything's Gucci. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Okay. So here we go. That's good. Right. So, well, where do we begin with this one? Oh, man. We're going to have to do a little history lesson here. The MEK, also known as the People's Mujahideen of Iran. They're also called the MKO sometimes. This is a group that was formed in Iran during the 60s, right? They were anti-Shah. The Shah is the puppet ruler who was, installed by Britain and the U.S. After Mossadegh tried to nationalize Iran's oil, right? You try to nationalize your country's resources, the West will come and coup you and put someone who will give them your resources. And the MEK formed out of this anti-Shah movement, and, they were part of the Iranian Revolution, the Islamic Revolution in 79. Again, they kind of exaggerate the role that they had in this, but, they're part of it regardless. And, in 79, after the revolution, many things happened with the MEK. They opposed the Constitution, right? There was a constitution put forward, a referendum was held about the Constitution. They were against it. And the referendum passed. The Constitution was adopted. So that's their first major political defeat. And then they were banned from running in the presidential elections, right? And then they ran in the parliamentary elections, and they didn't win a single seat. And then they literally assassinated the president of Iran and the prime minister and the chief of police in the same day. They blew up the prime minister's building, right? This is a page from the New York Times. There's a headline over here. Here, by the way, here's the president, Rajai. So they killed him in June, right? Excuse me, in August of 1981. August of 1981, right? And they killed the prime minister, and they also killed the chief of police. And guess what the MEK is doing today, right? So nowadays the MEK is a friend of the West. And this is very peculiar. This is very interesting because the MEK, while also committing terrorist acts inside of Iran, they were also killing Americans. They were extremely anti-American. They killed 3 American soldiers. They killed 3 American contractors. They even tried to kidnap the U.S. ambassador to Iran. They're not messing around, these people, huh? And during the embassy siege, right, you may recall that the Iranians, they released some hostages early. So I think they released the women, and they released the black hostages, basically anyone who wasn't a white male. They released them to show solidarity with oppressed peoples around the world. And the MEK was against that. They were against any early release of hostages, right? Then what happens? Saddam Hussein starts a war with Iran in 1980, which lasted until 1988. He recruits, he brings in the MEK, he gives them a base, he gives them weapons, he gives them money, and he becomes their primary source of funding. So these Iranians are literally attacking their own country now alongside Saddam Hussein. And of course, Saddam Hussein is being supported by who? The United States and the United Kingdom, right? And Europe at large, right? So the United States had given him chemical weapons, biological weapons at this time, right? When they accused Iraq of having WMDs in 2003, this was a lie. The entire program was dismantled by then. We knew it was a lie. People like Scott Ritter, who was on the show, I interviewed him. He's a great guy, right? He was the chief weapons inspector for the UN in Iraq. He literally knows better than anyone that there were no weapons there. He tried to warn. They didn't listen. They invaded. It was all a lie. But in the 80s, the United States wanted to attack Iran desperately. They hated Iran because Iran had, deposed the Shah, who was their puppet. They nationalized the oil. They took back their sovereignty, their dignity, their resources, their borders, everything. They cut ties with Israel. The first thing they did with the Israeli embassy, you know what they did? They gave it to the PLO, to the Palestinians. But the MEK goes and takes up arms against Iranians. And they're being backed by the US. They're being backed by Saddam. They're being backed by the West. And then what happens as well? They start taking up arms with the Israelis. So you may have recalled in 2010 to 2012, you had 4 very prominent Iranian nuclear scientists who were assassinated in Iran. Everyone knows the Mossad is behind this. This is an open secret. Who helped the MEK? Who helped the Mossad do that? The MEK. Just a few months ago, last year in November 2020, you had an Iranian nuclear scientist who was, I think, former scientist. Now he's a minister. I forgot what his role was when he was killed, but Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, right? He was a very prominent scientist. They killed him too, the Mossad. And who helped them? The MEK. And now, in recent times, their primary source of funding is Saudi Arabia. All right, Saudi Arabia is using them as a thorn in Iran's side. So you see, this group has a very peculiar history because they have no support in Iran, especially after aligning themselves with Saddam Hussein in the war from 80 to 88, in the Iran-Iraq war, the first real Gulf War, right, in the Persian Gulf. When they did that, when they went and fought alongside Saddam Hussein, they really, completely destroyed any hope of support, because now they were called munafiqeen in Iran. They were called traitors, right? Hypocrites, rather, is the word, but they were considered as traitors, right? So they have no support in Iran. They've killed U.S. soldiers. They've helped, in total, they've killed 17,000 Iranians. So not only are they considered terrorists in Iran, they're banned in Iran, in Iraq now, but the United States also, and the United Kingdom, had them on a list of terrorist groups, right? And then what happens in 2012? Hillary Clinton comes along and she removes them. She removes them from the lists of SDN, specially designated, the list of terror groups, and basically saying like, we're okay with you now. And it's not just Hillary who removes them, of course. There's a larger plan here. What's happening? It's not just, you're removed from the list of SDNs. You're also now paying U.S. officials. So the MEK was paying John Bolton, the national security advisor under Donald Trump. They're paying Rudy Giuliani. He calls them my MEK friends, right? You don't hear a lot about this. It's extraordinary. So they're paying Rudy Giuliani, Trump's lawyer and former mayor of New York, right? They're paying John Bolton, this neocon. They're paying other U.S. officials now. And now, what do? In the last days, what did they do this weekend, on the weekend of July 10th? They hold the Free Iran Global Summit. So what is this Free Iran Global Summit? Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look. So here's their website, right? And you can see here, let me just zoom in there for you. The Democratic Alternative on the March to Victory, July 10th to July 12th. Okay? And they're basically hosting an online event where they talk about, the Iranian elections are fraudulent. We have to go implement regime change. That's literally one of their slogans. Iranians want regime change. That's a slogan they use, right? And they hold this online event with a lot of guest speakers. Do you want to know who the guest speakers are? Let's take a look. Are you ready? So let me just scroll up over here. It's Mike Pompeo. Oh, how unsurprising. Mikey is here. Good old Mikey, right? So you remember Donald Trump's Secretary of State. And not just him. Look what happens as well, man. Look what happens as well. The Prime Minister of Slovenia is there, right? We have U.S. senators. Robert Mendes, who's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. That's good. That's very useful. Look who else. Ted Cruz. Kevin McCarthy. And you know who else is there? You know who else is there? They have the former, they have the British and French defense ministers. They have the former foreign ministers of, I think it was, damn, I can't keep up, man. I can't keep up with how many they are. They have the former foreign ministers of France, Italy, and I think also Poland, right? So you get the picture here. You have numerous currently serving officials in the U.S. Government and also in European governments and former ones, all attending the event of this group, which assassinated Americans, which assassinated the president of Iran, the prime minister of Iran. They're a terrorist group. And they, you know what they try to do? They try to market this group as a democratic alternative. And of course, they've relocated several times. They're banned in Iran. They have no support in Iran. So they've been kicked out from Iran. They went to Iraq. I think to France and then to Iraq, and from Iraq to Albania, right? So they have no local support in Iran, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because they are a tool. They're a pawn of the West. The United States, the Europeans, they're using them as a thorn in Iran's side. They're using them to harass Iran. The Israelis are using them to assassinate Iranian scientists. The Saudis are funding them. Man, let me tell you something. When the Americans, the British, the Saudis, and the Israelis get together to fuck you up, something bad going on. Something evil going on. And that's exactly the same people who have been doing this to Syria, right? So even though Al-Qaeda has attacked the United States helped create Al-Qaeda. The United States has no problem funding Al-Qaeda and its offshoots inside Syria, as long as it serves as foreign policy objectives, right? So as usual, you see Uncle Sam, you see the Americans, you see the British, you see even Iran's regional enemies, all getting together to fund terrorist groups to overthrow and to undermine and to subvert governments they don't like. And then they have the stones. They have the goddamn stones. Mike Pompeo has the stones to come here and say Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. Really? Who's sponsoring Al-Qaeda? Who's sponsoring the MEK? Who's speaking at their events? Could you imagine if you know, the Iranian foreign minister was speaking at an event of, I don't know, the KKK? Like, this is the equivalent of what's happening here. And people have no clue. They have no clue about this. All you see is, oh, look, they have these free Iran rallies. You see this on many news outlets. I think every single one of them tried to publicize this event because it wasn't just online. It was also, you had multiple cities holding these rallies, right? Like in person, wherever they could at least, because of the pandemic. So they don't tell you, oh, this is a group that has like killed 17,000 Iranians. They were fought with Saddam, with the Israelis. They killed the Iranian president. Oh, no. They're a democratic alternative. It's just like what they do in Syria, right? They bring you Al-Qaeda. They bring you people like Al-Jolani, who's an Al-Qaeda commander, and now Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and before that Al-Nusra. And they tell the guy, you know, who's executed boys for criticizing him, who kidnapped nuns in Ma'lula. Yeah, this kind of scum. And they say, oh, look, this guy, he's a reformed terrorist now. He's wearing a suit. He's a democratic alternative to Bashar al-Assad. What the fuck? Dude, the level of brainwashing, of propaganda, the level of scum behavior that you see from the West is unprecedented. This is astronomical. You think anyone in mainstream media is going to break this down for you? You don't hear any of this. You don't hear any of this. So, again, you can see here this headline that I wanted to show you over here. This is from a few years ago. Saudi prince, he attended at one of their events, basically endorsing them, right? He attended at the annual meeting. It was back in 2016, right? I mean, this is incredible, all these speakers that they have here. And as you can see, they're holding rallies. So this is very interesting because people who are supporting, who are protesting in support of Palestine, they're not allowed to hold rallies. You know, when a few weeks ago, 2 months ago now, in May, when the Israelis were bombing Gaza, people protested all over the world. It was great. They protested in support of Palestine, but people tried to protest in France. They wouldn't let them. They banned it. They banned the protest, right? But here, in other cities, oh, they let them go ahead. You know, Berlin, for example, just recently in Germany, they banned any Qudus Day celebrations, so Jerusalem Day celebrations, You know, they banned any sort of resistance flags like Hezbollah, Hamas. They designate all these groups as terrorists. But if you're a terrorist who's attacking Iran or Syria, they're totally fine with you, right? Terrorism is fine for the Westerners, for the Europeans, as long as it's against Syria and Iran and Venezuela and Cuba, etc., right? Then they totally love terrorism. They have no problem with groups like Al-Qaeda and MEK. Wow. So this is really incredible. And she's their leader, right? So she is their leader now. And it's really incredible, the level of deceit, of brainwashing that they do in the media. Because, you know, it's one thing for them to do what they're doing, but it's a totally different thing for the West to whitewash them and try to sponsor them and portray them as like some kind of legitimate opposition. This is exactly what they do with Venezuela as well, right? With Guaido. People in Venezuela don't even know who the fuck that is. How are you trying to make this person the president? No one even knows who he is. Not to mention that you have no goddamn business doing that. It's not about how popular he is, right? And same here. They're trying to portray this as an opposition. Dude, most people don't even know what the MEK is. Like, people our age who are born young, they don't even know what that is. And those who do, they know their history. They assassinated the president. They've killed, they also bombed the Iran Republican Party headquarters just 2 months before that, in June of 1981. They killed 77 officials that day, I think. 77. Incredible, right? And these are just two. These are just two of, they're obviously the two most prominent attacks, but two of many. So, you know, it's I don't know, I just find this incredible that this is how they talk about these people in the media. Look at Times of Israel. Look, they say Iran fumes over American European support for opposition group at Berlin rally. No, they're not an opposition group. An opposition group. That's really putting it mildly. That's like saying, you know, that's like saying Al-Qaeda in Syria is an opposition group. An opposition group, really? And I suppose the KKK and is also an opposition group. They're fucking terrorists. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. This is all over the media, right? All over the media. Look at this. Oh, the Free Iran World Summit. They talk about it like without any context, without explaining what it is. It's just unbelievable. It really is. So this is another lesson that one must exercise caution when looking at the mainstream media. Everything is just unbelievable. Everything is just unbelievable. How they whitewash them. They don't even care about their own. I mean, let me just be frank with you. If I were American and these people tried to kidnap an American ambassador, I would be outraged. Right? Rightfully so. You should be outraged. Never mind that they killed other Americans. So can you imagine how Iranians feel when they see shit like this, right? Iranians have suffered way more at the hands of the MEK. Way more. They're being used against Iranians by foreign governments. So imagine how hurtful, how angering that must be to see that. And I understand it also because of what they're doing in Syria. They bring you these fucking terrorist scum from all over the world, right? They bring you these crazy mercenaries from Chechnya or Afghanistan or Tunisia, you know, even from Turkey, right? From all over the world. They come there, they pay them to kill Syrians and then claim that these people are the Syrian opposition. These people are not even fucking Syrian. You're calling them freedom fighters? You're calling them a revolution? So I understand it to a certain degree, right? How they try to whitewash these terrorists and market them as something else, as an opposition. So this is, again, what we see in Cuba today is part of the same plot. They lie to you about what's going on there. They try to make the so-called opposition seem bigger than it is. They don't tell you about who's behind it. This is always the same goddamn game. The media, the Western corporate media and Western governments are like this, like hand in glove. And then they have the nerve to talk about state media in other countries. Man, this is crazy. So anyway, I'm just going to finish with this by saying I did an episode on this for Press TV. Go and watch it, right? It's the latest one. And of course, as you know, the United States stole the domain. They seized the domains of Press TV and other websites like Pirates. So now it's presstv.ir, not presstv.com. So there you go. So we have a couple of tips over here. This is from Emblem's Fate. My man says, mainstream media is ramping up their 1984 tactics, changing reality for Biden in our daily 10 minutes of hate, right? We must hate Cuba now, but in a few days, it'll be China or Syria again. Exactly, right? This is how it works. America complains about Korea when the U.S. has this propaganda system. I know, exactly. You just, I couldn't agree more. It's really like the perfect analogy, this 10 minutes of hate. That's all they do, man. That's all they do. They just brainwash people into hating people they've never met, countries they've never been to, that can't even place on a map. It's just so toxic, honestly. We got some super chats over here. Thank you so much. Jonathan says, Richard, thank you for all the work that you do. I'm humbled. I'm very grateful. I thank you, Jonathan, for your support. NRJ says, Habibi, get our Syrian sister, partisan girl, on your show. She does some excellent work on her YouTube channel. Love you, brother. Keep up the good work. Shukran, Habibi. Partisan girl, Barfa. Yani, she's been doing YouTube a lot longer, right? There are people that I've actually, I still haven't collaborated with, which is, there's a lot of future projects to do. I'm very excited, and you definitely need to do something together. There's not enough Syrian voices. You have so many people talking about Syria. We're not fucking Syrian, right? How can you talk about Syria? You're not Syrian. You don't speak Arabic. You haven't been to Syria. You don't know anyone in Syria. You haven't studied Syria. You can't do this, man. Syria is not like any other country. This is the Middle East. Syria is the key to peace in the Middle East. It's the key to everything. You have so many ethnic groups, religious groups. It's a whole mosaic. It's a patchwork of identities. It has such a long history. Dude, the city I'm born in, Damascus, is the oldest fucking city on the planet, right? Or, okay, if we're being technical, the oldest continuously inhabited city. There's so much history in this region, right? And people think they understand it. They don't even understand what's happening right now. Never mind, a century ago, or the colonial history. Nothing. They don't get anything. And I just want to say another thing. Something that bothers me a lot is that people make it seem like Syria is some place where some war just happened. No, it's not. No, it's not. Syria has more culture, more history, more vibrance than half of the people attacking it put together. It's true, man. It's true. Syria is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. It's the cradle of civilization. Literally, it's called the cradle of civilization. So it's not some country where there's a war happening. Fuck that shit. No. So that's why I try to do cultural, historical segments. I want people to understand the region, the country, the culture. It's very important. Because what they've been doing to Syria, they've been dragging Syria's name through the mud, right? That's what they've been doing. They're trying to portray it as some kind of like apocalyptic. No, it's not. It's Syria is the jewel of the Middle East, okay? So there's really a necessity for more Syrians to be heard, the people who are actually from the country, and also to talk more about the country's riches, cultural riches, historical riches, archaeological riches, religious and ethnic riches, its diversity. It's social fabric. This is very important to talk about because this is what makes Syria so special, right? And unfortunately, there's so many lies. There's so much lies and so much crap in the mainstream media that you're forced to react and to correct and to respond, and then you end up being sucked into their BS. But it's more than that. So I've done a couple of videos, of course, but we need to do more. Pookie New Jack City says, 12 children in one household, more hair sniff. You're talking about Joe Biden. Yeah. Oh God, that is really nasty. Honestly, that is really nasty. But speaking of Joe Biden sniffing, that was a perfect segue, right? Speaking of Joe Biden sniffing, if you take a look at the thermometer, we are over 400 patrons. I'm so grateful to you guys. Thank you for supporting anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, independent media. This is the spot for all foreign policy, all U.S. politics, all international relations and Middle East news. And if you want to support the show, please do so. You can do it for like $2 a month or $3. I don't care, whatever you like. Patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. Thank you so much. And if you want, you can also support on PayPal. There's a bunch of links you can just scan with your phone with the camera. I'm gonna pull them up for you right now. So this is a QR code for Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal. Thank you so much. All the links are below. I didn't completely plug the show yet, so I'm doing it now. And I'm very grateful for all your support. You know, there's so many of you who are signed up on Telegram. This is really important, man. You need to get your asses to Telegram, okay? So I made a Telegram channel. You'll get in the app, in the Telegram app. You'll get notifications when I go live, when I upload a video, when I post an article, anything, right? And I already saw some of you thanking me last time that I did this because you got a notification that I'm live, and usually YouTube doesn't notify you. So this is really crucial. The link is t.me/Medhurst. That's it. It's very simple. t.me/Medhurst. And I'm going to post the link down there. So there you go. In any case, thank you so much for all your support. All of the segments will be up shortly. And I'm just checking to see if you guys sent anything else. I'm trying to type at the same time and I screwed up the link. Hold on, there you go. There we go. Wonderful. So, yeah, we got some also on Rockfin. This is from Bobby. Says, don't you just love the U.S. term contractors? Mercenaries. Yeah, absolutely. They're mercenaries. It is really funny. And again, this is an excellent point that you raise about the terminology they use, right? So instead of saying mercenaries, which is what they are, they call them contractors, right? And in the media, you'll see also how when they're talking about the suffering that the United States and the EU have inflicted on Cuba, Yemen, Syria, with sanctions, they don't say sanctions, they say economic situation, whatever that means. It's absolutely incredible. I swear, go and look at any mainstream media report from CNN, Deutsche Welle, about Syria, about Venezuela, about Cuba. They always say this term, economic situation, and they tell you that people are suffering, and it's true. But why are they suffering? Why won't you say embargo? Why won't you say sanctions? Why won't you reveal the truth? Why do you hide this key detail? They make it seem, they try to frame it in a way as if the local government is wholeheartedly 100% responsible for all of the economic woes and discontent and suffering that people are put under, are put through. This is ridiculous. I mean, again, I hate having to make this disclaimer. Like, you know, there are people who think that like every time you criticize Western foreign policy, which should be criticized all the time because of how how rampant it is, they think that, oh, you must also make a disclaimer, but oh, you know, so and so is bad. Like, yes, U.S. foreign policy is bad, but Maduro is also... Fuck you. I don't have to give you this bullshit colonial disclaimer. This is crap to keep you in a box, to keep you brainwashed, right? Like, as if those two things are equal. Like, as if U.S. foreign policy and U.K. foreign policy are equal to any problems or corruption or whatever that exists in other countries. Every country has corruption. But the things that the U.K. does, the things that the U.S. do, centuries of colonialism, centuries of exploitation, centuries of slavery, centuries of plundering. They're still fucking plundering. They're still robbing. They're still killing. They're still stealing. They're still occupying. And you think that's fucking comparable to Bashar al-Assad or Maduro or Cuba? Go and fuck yourself. Go and screw yourself. I'm not making this bullshit colonial disclaimer every time. Screw you. This is what they do to try to change the topic and shift the focus away from the crimes of the U.S. empire, of the West. They're not equatable. Al-Qaeda is not just as bad as Bashar al-Assad. Fuck you. No, I'm not tolerating that. The MEK, the People's Mujahideen, is not just as bad as the Iranian government. These groups are far fucking worse, and they're sponsored by the West, and they're sponsored by Iran's enemies and Syria's enemies. They're a million times worse. What are you talking about? That's not comparable. And every single time you hear this, it's always people who don't come from these places, right? You have all these fucking big brain bozos who think that they're experts on Syria, and they've never even been to Syria. They probably can't even name any city in Syria apart Damascus. They don't even know how to speak the language. They don't know the history. They don't know the culture. They just watch some fucking Vice documentaries. They watch some crappy videos and read some Wikipedia articles and think they're experts. They think they're qualified. On what basis are you qualified to talk about Syria? What are your qualifications? Who said you know anything about this subject? Who said you're qualified? What are your credentials to speak about Iran? What are your credentials to speak about these countries? All of your media, all of your intake comes from English-speaking media, from the Anglosphere, which is completely permeated and rampant with propaganda. You don't know anything except propaganda. How could you be qualified to talk about this issue? You don't even make an effort to listen to the people from this country who are from there, who are born there, who have family there, who have lived there. You don't even make an effort. You think you're a fucking smartass. This is, again, and then they call themselves anti-interventionists. And I'm a leftist. You're a fucking white, arrogant, colonial bastard. That's what you are. You're indoctrinated and fucking brainwashed. You're no different from the bastards at the State Department. You're no different from some ignorant schmuck on the street. I don't care about your opinion. It's just an opinion. It's uninformed and ignorant. You're not qualified to speak about Iran or Syria or Iraq or the Middle East. You don't know your ass from your elbow. Have you even been outside the United States? Have you even left your fucking country? What do you know of these places? Every asshole thinks that they have the right to have an opinion about Syria, about, again, a country that their government is vilifying and bombing and sanctioning and starving. They think they're more informed than the people who come from the country, than its own citizens. Unbelievable arrogance. Unbelievable arrogance. So anyway, give me a second, man. Donnie Dunn says, watching some of those vlogs, those travel vlogs, do a pretty good job showing the beauty, culture, and of many countries in Middle East and Africa. Yes, I absolutely agree. If you go on YouTube, there is one chap who's called Drew Binsky, and he has a travel vlog channel. And there's another girl, I'm forgetting her name, but she's been also to this island in Yemen, Socotra, which is a beautiful island. And my point is that both of them have been to Syria, among many, many, many other countries, right? But I speak specifically about Syria here. And it's exactly what you just said. They really show you the friendliness of the people. They really show you, and this is everywhere, of course. I just underline Syria because Syria is, again, you hear nothing but war about the country. And so it's nice to have people actually go there and show you another side of it, the humanity of it. And yeah, it's really nice. So I absolutely agree with you. I think people should go watch travel vlogs, travel channels, and just not just about Syria, every country. It's so much to learn. It's so much to appreciate. It's so much better than the news that dehumanizes and just completely, eviscerates and dulls and nullifies the humanity, the culture, the beauty of all these other countries, right? It's very important. So thank you for that. That's very important. And Cam 35mm says, well, it's just a sticker. So it's a mic drop. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. I'm just making sure that I haven't missed anyone's comments or donations. I'm very grateful for your support. Right. So again, before I go, guys, just make sure to sign up on Telegram so you don't miss any live stream notifications. The Substack where I write articles, it's RichardMedhurst.substack.com. We're live streaming on Rockfin. Rockfin is an alternative to YouTube. ROKFIN.com/RichardMedhurst. And I know that's a lot to digest, but it's important. The point why I do this is because we can't just depend on YouTube. You already know what YouTube does to channels like this. They already demonetized me once. I don't even know why. It just coincided with me talking about Israel. And yeah, so it's good to diversify, that we don't have all our eggs in one basket, and we have, yeah, it's a contingency plan. It's good. So go on Substack, go on Telegram, go on Rockfin. This is very important. And there's, of course, the links are always in the description. So this doesn't cost you anything, huh? This is all free. Everything I do is free. So Pookie New Jack City says, they say JD goes nuclear. I'm assuming, okay, they say Jimmy Dore goes nuclear. Richard Medhurst speaks truth to power. Well, I'm very grateful. I'm very humbled by your comment. And thank you very much. You guys are very kind. And it's just, it's angering seeing people think that they're smartasses and they understand very complex places. Again, it's just, this is not just about, oh, do you speak the language? No. This is about the propaganda. You have so much propaganda surrounding the Middle East. You have so much propaganda surrounding Syria. Syria has been fighting not just a military war against Al-Qaeda, against ISIS, against, Jaish al-Islam, against Falaq al-Rahman. All of these offshoots. They've been fighting against Turkey, against Israel, against the United States, the UK, against Saudi Arabia, Qatar. It's never ending. right? So it's not just a military war, this is a propaganda as well. You've had an equal amount of attacks in the media, right? There are so many lies about Syria all the time, every single day. This is not just about Duma. Duma is not even 1% of the war. There's so much more than that. There's sanctions that a lot of people, they gloss over, especially in the mainstream media. They won't even talk about it, right? There's so much propaganda surrounding the Syrian war, and surrounding the Middle East, and particularly the Syrian war. And again, I find it disgusting that they reduce my country to a fucking war zone. It's not. It's older than most countries in the world, right? I'm born in the oldest city in the world. It's not just some place where there's a war happening. It's disgusting. It's really upsetting, right? It's really upsetting. This is what they do to Palestine. This is what they do to Iraq. This is what they do to Syria. They take literally the cradle of civilization. They take the oldest places in the world, on the planet, with all their history, all their culture, all their richness in diversity, and they reduce them to a war zone in the media and also sometimes, unfortunately, in reality as well. And they brainwash people into just hating these countries and hating the people there. And this is so disgusting. So I won't tolerate this. So there you go. And Bob says oil policy, oppression, insurgency, larceny. I mean, it's all about the oil, huh? With the U.S. It's all about the oil. And in the words of Dave Chappelle, what oil, bitch, you cooking? That's my favorite one by Chappelle, the Black Bush. That's his best sketch, his best one ever. Really the best one. So thank you guys so much for all of your comments, all of your kind words. I will leave you now. Make sure you've liked and shared the video, and perhaps we can illuminate some other minds. And I'm very grateful for all your support and for tuning in. Thank you so much, as always. 400 patrons out. This is insane. I'm speechless. Thank you. I'll leave all the links up here, and have a great night, great evening, wherever you are. Good morning, and be good, be safe. Ma'as salama.